Good evening and welcome to In Focus. I'm Phil D'Amico, filling in for Eric Marsh, who has the night off. Many thanks to everyone here at WCTV for allowing me the opportunity to host this evening, so thank you. Tonight we have a very special program, and we're going to talk a little bit about a new initiative that's going on called Forward Wayne County. Coming up later in the program, we're going to catch up with Chad Bolser, who's the Chancellor at Ivy Tech here in Richmond, and we're going to talk about workforce and job skills. But first up, as I promised, we're going to talk about Forward Wayne County. We welcome Steve Borchers, who's the President and CEO of the Wayne County Foundation, along with Pat Heiny, who's one of our top community leaders. Great to have both of you here. Thank you so much. Steve, talking about, maybe where the future looks as it relates to Wayne County. And I know there's a new initiative going on. Maybe give us an overview of Forward Wayne County.
Well, thanks, Phil. It's maybe not so much a new initiative as it is the most recent iteration or
Next step.
The most recent step for a lot of things that have been going on. But Forward Wayne County sort of grew out of the Mayor Sally Hutton's Economic Vitality Committee or Council, and the work that Pat and some others did on the America's Best Communities grant application, which all had deeper roots from Wayne County vision and some things either farther back than that. But it simply provides a framework for us to begin to discuss where we want to grow as a community, where we want to go and how we want to grow. And it provides a forum, if you will, or a platform by which we can identify current priorities, decide how we want to attack those, how we want to fund them, pursue them, and where it all fits together as a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Steve talked about that it's been around, so you put a timeline together, right? So some of these things have been in place for a while.
What's interesting is the conversation has always been about how are we going to be a community that attracts business and companies. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Valerie Schaefer came to the Mayor's Council on Economic Vitality and said, folks, we have jobs, we need a workforce. So the framework of Forward Wayne County focuses on attracting, retaining, and developing the kind of human capital workforce that we're going to need to be prosperous. I think what people need to know is that this whole idea is to align or pull efforts together so that we can begin to inch forward the prosperity of this county, meaning the prosperity for individuals.
How critical is this, Steve, for maybe the future of Wayne County and really our region?
Well, I think it's really critical because what we're talking about is economic vitality and prosperity. And whether that happens in a community of 70,000 people or 65,000 or 50,000 or 80,000, we have to sort of set our sights on where we want to go. I mean, we're also, I think, cognizant that you can't get ahead by just solving problems. You have to be a little bit aspirational to say, where do we want to be? And in the course of getting from here to there, some of the problems will get solved along the way.
What I think is interesting, the Indiana Chamber was in recently and did a report card of Indiana compared to other states in the country, and then looked at our region basically compared to other regions. And it's interesting, they wanted to make sure everybody knew some of the issues and opportunities you have are the same thing that everybody else is facing around the state. Maybe give us an overview. What are some of those key areas that we're trying to affect here?
There are 2 focus areas. One is human capital development. And we didn't want to just say we want to put people in the workforce. We want to take a look at young people before birth all the way through the pipeline, the continuum, and I think we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But the human capital development is people in school, but it also includes preparing them for the jobs of today and tomorrow. What kind of skills do they need? And employers tell us that it's not just technical skills, it is what they call the soft skills. So we've been focusing on who's doing what. And to Steve's point, there's no one organization or no one anything who can do the entire pipeline. So it's going to require a lot of folks. That pipeline also includes health and wellness. But the other piece is quality of place. And quality of place may be hard to define. And we've been talking about it in terms of quality of place for you, because quality of place for you is probably different than the quality of place for me.
Or young professionals.
Or a young professional, or a family with young children. How do you identify quality of place? We do know one thing. Neighborhood development is huge in terms of quality of place, but so is housing. So those are the focus areas within that particular topic. But the two broadest topics are those: human capital development and quality of place.
Yeah,
And
I think,
so
go ahead, yeah.
one of the things that the platform really does, or the framework does, is it gives organizations who are involved in a lot of these different areas, if you will, a lot of these different priorities. It gives them the opportunity to come together and understand how what they're doing relates to what other people are doing, and to do more than just align, but to come together and actively collaborate and understand how together we can make a bigger difference than we can by doing things individually.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, you've probably found out through this process, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals already doing work in some of these areas. Maybe this gives the framework to pull all of those things together, maybe have one kind of clearinghouse, so to speak.
That's right. We kind of look at the Forward Wayne County, what we're calling a leadership forum, as a place where we can hold ourselves accountable, and to hold ourselves accountable relative to identified benchmarks and goals. And so if we are able to do this right, we have some overall benchmarks that relate to prosperity and maybe job creation, educational attainment, big picture population patterns, big picture items that we can't really address directly all the time. But we know that if in each one of our focus areas and in each one of the key, I forget what we called them.
Workplace.
Task
forces, work areas.
In each one of the committees and at a community level, organizational level.
That's good.
That if people have goals that they can be measured against, then we will know if we're making progress or not.
Yeah, and I want to invite our viewers to, certainly there's a number of ways you can don't let these guys off easy. I don't want to be the only one asking questions here, but feel free. There's a number of ways on your screen right now that you can call in, email us, Twitter, go through Twitter. We can take a phone call, so just please feel free to, if you have any questions. I think, go ahead.
I want to talk a little more about what we mean by collectively doing something. Some organizations have said, but wait a minute, I have a national mission, I have a national vision. How am I going to give that up? It's not giving that up. It's exactly what Steve said. It is taking this organization's national mission or vision and actually saying, we can do X, Y, and Z to make this goal happen within the confines of our mission and vision. Because we have very good organizations out there, but if they're doing spinning their plate here, like the old Ed Sullivan show, spinning this plate, spinning this plate. But how if we are all, and probably the best way to do that is talking the same language. We want every organization to say, we're making Forward Wayne County work. This is our part in that.
I know one of the key missions here, Steve, Indiana as a whole has been concerned and really wants to focus on how do we increase population, right? We're at 6 million now as a state. They really want to figure out how to get to 9 million.
Right.
I think that's what we saw in some of the regional cities initiatives that they tried to roll out. So this is a focal point. That is one measurable, I think, that it's a focal point for all communities throughout Indiana, and I know that is one of your measures, right?
Yeah, actually, Wayne County, Richmond and Wayne County have been losing population steadily since 1970. And the projections for the next few years are just as dire. I mean, that trend is seen as continuing. So what's going to make a change in that? Well, one thing we could do is to help attract people into the region. And of course we want to attract talented workers into the region, because when companies come into the region, they need workers, and they will help bring that in. But having talented workers here will also help bring other companies in.
And
Developing our own.
But some companies and places that are already here employ people who live somewhere else.
Right.
If you ever see the graphic of Wayne County and the number of people who come in here to work, what would happen if half of them lived here instead of commuted in here? And we hear some, and the Vision 2025 report said people don't want to live here. Do you remember that
I do,
section?
yeah. As a chamber president, it keeps me up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
I
Which is
remember that.
why quality of place is so valuable. That's why it is as important to focus on where we live as it is on the people who live here.
Yeah, it's the quality of place that will help attract
Right.
individuals to come here, whether that's young professionals or retirees. They're looking for a place where they want to live.
So this is a process that's ongoing. Where are we at in the stages? Where do we think that this can go? And maybe give us a timeline, maybe moving in the future.
Well, we see this as a very long-term proposition.
It's probably ongoing, right? A lot of the
it has to
initiatives,
be.
yeah.
And so in a sense, we're really at the very beginning of this particular iteration. I think we had our first, the first meeting on this was in spring of 2016.
March
and we
31.
had another couple of meetings towards the end of 2016 and in May of this year. We'll have one here later this month. But this is really beginning to get rolling, and in fact may involve creating something of an organizational structure and bringing someone in who can wake up every morning thinking about how can I really make this happen.
We're seeing other models, correct, throughout the state
Right.
that are similar. Maybe
Northeast Indiana, Fort Wayne, there are 11 counties there.
Right.
And they came together around a very specific goal. I need to mention a couple of other things about the entire framework. If you see the description of the framework, there's a box that says communication. In the America's Best Communities process, and Phil, you weren't around then, it was kind of an interesting process. One of the companies in town said, we have this national contest going on and you're doing lots of interesting things here, you ought to apply. So we filled out an application describing all of the efforts toward economic vitality. And then we made it through the quarterfinals, we were ready to go the next step, we didn't make that. But to put together the plan, we read and analyzed every strategic plan for major community or economic development organizations. Every one of them had a task of communication, connection, collaboration. Nobody was really focusing on that, but every plan said, if we want to be a progressive community or county, we've got to learn to communicate among ourselves and outside. We don't have a very good image of ourselves, and that in itself was a big detriment to whatever progress we were trying to make. So we do have a section of how are we going to work together while we're doing human capital development and quality of place.
It would seem, Steve, that with taking care of some of the population and increasing to our population, a lot of the other metrics would take care of itself, the median wage and those kind of things that we hope to affect somewhere down the road. But I think it does start with getting people, retaining certainly, but getting some interest from outside the community, having people move here.
Absolutely. The name escapes me right now. It was the group from Indiana University.
Public policy.
Public policy, but I can't think of the name of the initiative.
Thriving.
Thriving communities, thriving state. And they identified population gain or loss as a significant driver in major urban areas, mid-sized communities, and rural communities. And yes, I mean, when you think about it, population creates a critical mass for all sorts of amenities that we have here in the community, and when that starts eroding away, it erodes away at the community itself.
Yeah, and I want to get back to something you talked about earlier in the program. Quality of life is different for every one of us. How do we affect maybe change or positive impact on all of those sectors? Because it's very vast. It's a vast, as you
Okay,
mentioned
that's
earlier.
the question for the audience. Let them answer that. That's a huge issue. That is a big
yeah.
one of. I think the first step is actually identifying that quality of place is different for different people.
Right.
And that we probably do have to look at what do young families want in terms of neighborhoods and housing and education opportunities. What do senior citizens who are retired who want to stay here? What do they want? And then then we have to bring organizations together to say, how can we meet those needs? We have a lot of amenities. When people here, we have a symphony and we have the art museum that you can't see right now, but will be fabulous pretty soon. And that we have the environment. We have a lot of places that are considered amenities. How we help them thrive, and that's we have to have a critical mass of people to help those amenities thrive. But we also have to introduce those amenities to other people. So it's a twofold. You have to provide the amenities, for example, but you have to convince the people who are already here that they like them and that they want them, and that's part of their quality of place. So it comes back to actually physical areas and places and facilities, but also helping people see that they do have a quality of place. Language, communication, marketing, education is a huge part of this whole effort. How do you get people thinking in terms of, oh, I do like that. It is my quality of place. So we have to get them convinced.
Maybe share a little bit, I know Pat talked about Northeast Indiana, Fort Wayne. Maybe share a little bit about that model. I know you've researched it. You've had individuals from that area in. Maybe give us an overview there, and how can that be of assistance as Forward Wayne County moves forward?
Well, we thought it was a useful model because even though it is much, much larger in scope and scale, it was really focused on the same kinds of things. Population, economic vitality, prosperity, their big push there with educational attainment in the region, attracting companies into the region. There was another one that just went out of my head, but the things that they were doing there are essentially working together to find these synergies to help themselves grow in their region, create more opportunity for people.
And they found an economic focus.
Yeah, the faster they figured out, the faster they could develop a critical mass of population that was larger than what they currently have, that it would bring economic benefits exponentially to the region.
Yeah, they're trying to grow to 1 million people.
To 1 million.
Yeah.
Now the difference is they're on an upward trajectory anyway, but a much shallower, much flatter trajectory. They want to increase the angle, if you will, to help that population grow steeper.
I know we're early into this. I know that maybe the results may not be seen for years down the road. How quick do you think we can see change, or is it happening now already?
A couple of efforts that I think will begin to show change quickly. We'll probably talk more about the Early Learning Coalition with the pipeline, but we received a grant to help convince the people in this community that they have to help prepare children for kindergarten. And that's not to teach them to read or any of those things, but actually help them prepare to learn when they get to kindergarten. And I think we'll begin to see a bit of movement there with some organizations. And we can talk about the Chamber's efforts with their Business Education Committee. I think we'll begin to see some efforts with finding gaps in that pipeline of students, and we'll probably talk a little more about that.
I know a guy that works at the Chamber, by the way.
Yes, we know
decent
that.
guy from what I've heard.
I know it.
Ask Chad Bolser about the higher employability program.
We're going to get into that.
Get into that.
The third segment.
Point is that Forward Wayne County as an initiative didn't create these things in and of itself. These things would have happened even if this idea weren't around. What Forward Wayne County does is helps provide this framework or platform or structure by which these things can come together to create even more meaning and more impact.
Well, Steve, I'm a big fan of what you and the foundation are doing, so thank you for leading and guiding these efforts. I think it's so critical for the future of the county and the region, so thank you. Can you stick around, by the way? We're going to talk a little bit about education. We'll get more into that. And Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank
and we'll
you.
look forward to having you down the road as you get more
bet.
into this. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Pat. We're going to talk a little bit more about the human capital pipeline and get more into education. And then in the third segment, we'll talk more about the higher ed segment with Chad Bolser, and we'll get more into the skills and workforce development part. Stay with us as we come back on In Focus.
Hi, I'm Allison Zeidel, host of Environmentally Speaking on WCTV Channel 11. Join us next time when we'll visit Johnson Family Farms in Fountain City, Indiana.
We grow a straight yellow corn like that, and then we have a bicolor and a white.
We really appreciate the support because without the local community, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing.
Join us on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 p.m. on WGTV Channel 11.
Hi, I'm Melissa Vance with the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to invite you to join me for Chamber Chat. On this month's episode, we'll be talking with Kelly and Kent from Optimize IT, all about Taste of Wayne County and the Business Expo coming up. And then we'll head over to Primex Plastics and take a look inside their plant. Hope you can join us.
And welcome back to In Focus. Our discussion tonight is going to really center around Forward Wayne County. And then part of Forward Wayne County, as we get into more specifics, we welcome back Pat Heiny, is the education component. You talked about so many things as it relates to the education part of Forward Wayne County, which I think is one of the most, if not the most critical part as we look forward to, you know, the initiative. Talk a little bit about, I know you're guiding a human capital pipeline. Maybe give us an overview of that, and then we're going to pull up a slide that you can comment on, but give us an overview first.
Interestingly, the whole conversation about human capital started when Ivy Tech celebrated its 50th anniversary, and every county had to have a complete college coalition.
Okay.
And somebody had to ask the question, why are we not graduating as many as we needed to graduate? What's happening? What's preventing young people or people who've gone back to school from finishing their education there? Partly because we know we need skilled workers. We'll get to that in a moment. So we started asking questions, and we found that transportation, we found that child care, access to technology, but more importantly, preparation early on. Folks didn't have the ongoing education preparation to be successful in college or at community college. The pipeline developed because we started thinking, so what happens to kids? Why do they?
Yeah, we got a graphic. Why don't we pull the graphic
Oh,
up?
the
We can talk
graphic is a
about that.
wonderful illustration because even though it does look like a true pipeline, but if you notice, there are junctions. That's my plumber friends tell me, that there are junctions. And in those junctions, those are the places where we lose students.
Well, you're talking key areas, which they talk about as fourth grade. Is a big
Absolutely.
issue because if you haven't, you know, the initiative, if you're not up to a 4th grade reading level, it gets more difficult from
that's
there, right?
exactly.
And then 8th into 9th is another critical part where you can get a
And
leaky
we also
pipe.
find that the intermediate ages, because the puberty or the prepubescence and all the emotional turmoil that they go
Sure.
through, that's learning. But we've also discovered, if you want to scoot the pipeline over a little bit so we can see the very beginning, if they don't get a good start.
Right.
If you notice any of the brain research, the synapses all connect early on. And what we want to say to people is, you don't have to be an educator if you just love the preschool child, talk to them, read to them, let them play with other kids, get them connected. Do you know, this is interesting. What do kids need to know to be able to be successful in kindergarten? They need to know how to listen. They need to know how to follow directions. They need to know how to sit still, and they need to know how to play with others.
Collaboration skills, right? Yeah.
It all sounds like work skills, right? Work-ready skills.
It's what we talk about, you know, what employers are looking for, right? It
Exactly.
starts so early. I think it's interesting. There's always that discussion on communities know how big of jails to build when they look at where students are. Yeah.
Second grade reading.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other pipeline junctions that you might have seen there was at the 3rd grade. The state of Indiana says that if kids can't pass the I-read test
Right.
at the end of 3rd grade, they can't go on to 4th grade for the very thing you said. And when I was on the school board, we were always told, you learn to read until the 3rd grade so that you can read to learn after that, because you get into more substantive things. If you recall, Rick Ahaus and Vic Josie,
Sure.
about 10 years ago, were at an education summit, and they heard Suzanne Morse say, you want to know how many jail beds to build?
Right.
Look at your 2nd grade reading scores. So the question is, for Rick and Vic, why wait till then?
Sure.
Let's do the 3rd grade academy. That's an example of how people have taken a part of the pipeline to build that continuum. I think the most important thing, Phil, that we have not always thought about is that a child's development, while it doesn't go smoothly all of the time, needs to follow a continuum.
Right.
There are certain things that happen at certain times. One of our overall goals for Forward Wayne County is educational attainment. We want Vision 2025 from the State Chamber, as well as the Lumina Foundation, says that for a community to be prosperous, 60% of our people need a credential or a college degree.
Like a technical certification, right?
Absolutely.
Or a college degree. And that is one of the areas that we found Indiana as a state was lagging behind in other states.
Absolutely.
And then we found certainly this is an area of opportunity for our region. But I thought it was interesting. Georgetown did a study, said about 80% of the workforce today needs some kind of a, as you said, some kind of a post-high school certification or education. Is that a key metric that we hope to move through this?
Absolutely, this
Yeah.
60%. But you can't just look at what happens in high school. We're getting kids out of high school,
Right.
it seems, but are they getting into the other
Very true.
programs successfully and finishing those? That's why the pipeline is moving like
Right.
that, so that it shows movement from one to another. What we want people to see is that their piece of the pipeline is important. We have an early learning coalition that we mentioned in the first segment, where people who are interested in early learning are coming together. We have preschool, we have childcare, we have birth to 5, we have Every Child Can Read. We have all of those programs coming together, so they all talk the same language. Let's help our kids learn to listen. Let's help our kids learn to work with others. The other challenge we have right now are health issues
Right.
for kids all up and down the line, especially with the opioid addiction and those kind of things. So we have to kind of fight too
Well,
at
you look
another
at
pace.
free and reduced lunch, for instance, is another. That's another barrier that has to be overcome, for sure. What role do our education institutions play in what Steve was talking about as far as Forward Wayne County, both from maybe the elementary school, as you talked about, the high school level, and maybe the college level? How do all of those fit into Forward Wayne County?
This is where the chamber gets the plug, right? The chamber committee chamber has a committee called Business Education, and sitting around that table are 25
Yeah,
people, high school, higher education, business employers, looking to see how can we improve our workforce. And so we challenge them at their last meeting to think about what's a gap, where are we missing, what's missing in this pipeline. And one of the things they said is, do kids have enough experiences with real work?
Right.
Do they know what work is? Is there a stigma in this community where we don't value the work that requires a credential? Welders or truck drivers. The woman from DOT said truck drivers can make 6 figures if they are good
Industrial
and
maintenance.
safe. Industrial
Yeah,
maintenance.
exactly.
But that requires additional work above the high school. I think the most important thing I took away from that group discussion we had was we've got to get elementary, talking to middle school, talking to high school, talking to college, talking to businesses, so that kids and families see that it's a continuum across their life.
Yeah, there was a big education piece there, educating the parents, educating the guidance counselors, educating the school system on what are all of the jobs out there, not just four-year colleges, right? So the career in tech ed takes on a new meaning, and I think that is one of the key areas here.
Absolutely. I think 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the movement was every kid needs to go to college.
Right.
We got to get them all in college.
Right.
And I think we've created a stigma around hard-working, the technical jobs, the other kinds of jobs that we all need to be able to have a successful community. We have to help kids. The other thing that really concerns me, I teach a Sunday school class, I've worked in the school board, of course. Kids don't know what they do well, nor do they know what that connects to. I don't want them choosing a career when they're in the 5th and 6th grade, but I want them to know if they like to read to find out information, or if they like to work with their hands, or they like to experiment with things, or they're willing to step out and try something new.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point. I want to touch on that. Kids they learn differently today, right? Than when I was in school. It's more project-based, more hands-on, those kind of things. Do we see education, I mean, how critical is education changing maybe a little bit how it teaches into the long-term vision?
I don't think the way kids are learning now is different. It's just that the way schools are providing it is different.
Yeah, right.
And meeting the needs of kids. And project-based is really important, because if you ask any employer what he or she expects of employees, they need to work with others, which comes down to project-based. And so they have to figure out a challenge. They have to figure out the challenge. They have to figure out, well, what problem are we trying to solve? What are the possible solutions? Now let's work together to make it happen. And sometimes we didn't used to get that, did we? We had a textbook we read and went on. So I think schools are beginning, but they will only adopt and adapt if they know what the workplace needs, which goes back to that connection among that every part of that particular pipeline.
Well, we're seeing early college play a role, right? So kids are leaving high school now, some with they get an associate's degree before they get their high school diploma.
Absolutely.
So how critical is early college maybe to, when you talked about having that professional certification and or an associate's degree and or a bachelor's degree, how big of a role is that?
Do you know the origin of early college?
No.
Alan Borf was superintendent. I was on the school board at that time. And a number of high schools around the state were providing early college, meaning they could take high school classes, and it's not just dual credit, but real Ivy Tech college classes. But what we discovered was that if kids didn't have the preparation before they got to high school, they didn't know quite what to do with all of that. So early college in Richmond is the only intermediate school with a preparatory academy for getting kids ready. And it is identifying high quality, high ability kids and there are some economic stipulations for that, but they are a cohort of students that move through the classes, the academic classes and the other classes. Right now, the Early College Preparatory Academy is housed at the Hibbard Program Building. What it's taught us is that with that kind of effort, parents are really a vital part of that, and they have to sign a contract. They participate in a lot of things. So we've learned some lessons there that we're trying to take out to other places, but give kids practical experience, show them what it takes to use that practical experience, and it's changing the way students are seeing school.
Yeah, and moving the needle on some of these tasks and metrics is a daunting task, right?
Yes.
Where do we start? So we're looking at education. I know it's a loaded question, but what are some of the things that we can do, as Steve talked about, maybe moving the needle, affecting the education metrics?
Two things that I heard your Business Education Committee talk about. There's some interesting research that says if kids have at least 3 or 4 relationships outside of their family where people set expectations, people are talking to them about possibilities. So we talked about in the Business Education Committee about upping the mentoring programs and getting more kids into internships and apprenticeships. That's doable, and I think that would show definite progress. The other piece has got to be early learning. We have got to focus, and every grandparent out there, every parent, every neighbor has to start paying attention to these little kids and making sure that they're getting the connections and relationships they need.
So how quickly can we see some of the metrics move? How quickly can we see them affected?
Want an example?
Sure, absolutely.
A few years ago, Richmond was considered a dropout factory.
I do remember that.
You remember that?
Sure.
That took about 5 or 6 years, and it began to turn around because what Steve was talking about earlier, lots of people came together. This program, still doing what they do well, but they all came together to say to this one kid. So this one kid may have a faith community, they may go to Boys and Girls Club, they may go someplace else, but everybody was saying, look, you got to stay in school, look, you've got to do this, and it began to move, and we really upped the mentorship and study buddies and those kind of things, which really began, and it turned around.
Yeah, the mentoring process, huge. The other thing I heard or hear a lot in the community is getting kids out more into the community, seeing what other careers are out there. The challenge there, and I want to get your thoughts because you were on the school board, there's only an X number of days that kids have.
And hours.
In hours, right? The state requirements are testing and so forth for students. That seems to be a barrier. Is that something that can be overcome?
What happens if businesses come into the schools?
Right.
And I think we've heard examples around the county of where high school students, through their scheduling, have a couple of hours here or a couple of hours there, so they can begin to take a look at that. But I think getting people into the buildings is important. But also, don't forget, there's summer.
Right.
You know, the fire department has an interesting program for kids to come into the fire department or learn EMT. And so there's after school, there are those kinds of activities. We just have to be a bit more intentional in getting kids into that.
I think looking at this education component, it fits into so many other things that Steve was talking about as far as the Forward Wayne County. Upping the median wage, right, is one. Increasing your number of degrees and certifications, adding to the quality of life, exposing to the arts, all of those things. Is this a good place for Forward Wayne County to start on the education component?
And we like to call it the human capital rather than, because sometimes education looks like only school.
Right.
And we are talking about an entire community focusing on developing kids from pre-birth all of the way to a place until they get a degree or something like that. Every organization, I mean, every faith community, all of the youth serving organizations have to start, and they already are. Let's get them saying, hey, we want to make sure we get kids through, that they understand their talents, that they know what's going on in the work world.
No, it's great. The work that you're doing is outstanding, and I'm so grateful for, you just need more energy. I don't know.
I know.
But it's great. Thank you for the work that you're doing. We'll have you back and talk a little bit about this further down the road, see the progress that we're making and get involved more in the initiatives that you're involved in. But thank you again for being here tonight.
You are quite welcome,
It's great
Bill.
to have you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have Chad Bolser, Chancellor of Ivy Tech. We'll talk about his partnership with Governor Holcomb and rolling out new workforce skills for our community. Stay with us as we return to In Focus.
Hi, I'm Eric Marsh, guest host for this month's episode of Cuffs. Join me as I talk to Tim Scales from Indiana University East and Bruce Daggy from the Boys and Girls Club about the Action Fund.
Academic success. And over the last 10 plus years, we've put more focus on academic success than ever before.
Cuffs, Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. on WGTV, Channel 11.
Hi, I'm Tim Scales, the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and the host of In Your Business, a television show where we talk to entrepreneurs. We learn about their business, how they started their business, where their business is today, and all the different things that go on with business. On our next episode, we'll visit with Mitch Johnson from Mitch Johnson Lawn Care.
You have to step it up one and make it look better than what, you know, the equipment they have.
Watch In Your Business on Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. on WETV, Channel 20.
Hi, I'm Sherry Harlan, Community Outreach Coordinator at Reed Health and Program Host for Reed Beside You. Join us for our next episode where I'll be speaking with Gina Harvey, Wellness Specialist with Reed Health, and we'll discuss the new readhealthier.org portal coming in August. Join us on Channel 20 WETV Thursday at 8 o'clock.
And welcome back to our third segment as we welcome in Chad Bolser, Chancellor of Ivy Tech. We're talking off air. We need a whole separate segment just to talk about football and basketball. So it's great.
No question.
Yeah.
We cannot get started on
Exactly.
that or we'll be in trouble.
But it's great to have you. I know that I kind of teased it, but I know Governor Holcomb has released some workforce skills that partnering with Ivy Tech. Maybe give us an overview.
Yeah, Governor Holcomb a few weeks ago announced the Next Level Jobs program. And the Next Level Jobs program is really about doing exactly what was talked about in the previous two segments. Sure. When we talk about that human capital pipeline, we know that there is a portion of that is that folks, after they get out of high school, after they obtain their GED or their HSC or their or their diploma, there are skills gaps. And there are technical skills gaps, and because those gaps are there are jobs that folks cannot obtain. And so one of the things, and I think the state has recognized that, I think we've all talked about it in a variety of ways, whether it's chamber or economic development, we know that the workforce issue, I think Pat said it best, is that we have a workforce issue, not just here, but around the state.
Right, absolutely.
And the state is saying we have some opportunities. The Next Level Jobs program is a two-part program. It's one for specific individuals to go to the Workforce Ready grants, in which these programs will be paid for. You go into the program and they will be paid for to get short-term certificates or technical certificates. There's about 17 pages of both credit and non-credit options that we know as a state. We've identified those areas that there are jobs and high demand jobs, high wage jobs that are available right now. And so the state is committed to utilize these grants, Workforce Ready grants, to educate those folks in short-term certification programs. They're doing it with the main provider, obviously, as Ivy Tech, as a statewide community college, also Vincennes University. It's not just an Ivy Tech program. But this is really to specifically address the skills gap that we all know is there and we talk about a lot. We're excited about it because we know that population, if we can close that gap, we have an opportunity to fill the jobs that are available here in Wayne County, in Richmond, Wayne County, and in this region.
Well, number one, I'm a big fan of yours and what you're doing at Ivy Tech, and I think Ivy Tech is so critical in every community, but I think specifically here, we talked about moving the needle not just for four-year degrees and not even really two-year degrees, but professional certifications. So it seems like this covers that.
Yeah, there's no question about that. That you know, there's some specificity to this that's really important. Now, again, we couldn't have a graphic big enough on the screen to list the literally hundreds of certificates that are available through Workforce Ready. However, what we know is that the jobs in this area, it's very specific. I was talking to one of our local owners, Pete Zaleski, Phillips Drugs.
Yep.
They've hired their 11th Ivy Tech pharmacy technician, the 11th graduate of that program just this week. That's specifically talking about in the workforce, community ownership, and those short-term certificates that get really good paying jobs.
Is there a certain age group that we're targeting here, or is this across the board?
Yeah, the qualifications, you have to have your high school diploma or equivalency.
Sure.
So HSC, any of those high school equivalents.
So it could be 18
GED,
to whatever, right?
Yes, absolutely. So there's no question. This is designed for not only folks who have that are right out of high school, but if you're not employed right now, or if you're employed and, as the title indicates, you would like to get to that next level of employment. You want to go from a $10 to $12 entry-level position to a $15 an hour or $18 an hour position. I think this is, and you know that is a certificate away. So you come in, you take 6, 12 hours, you get it all paid for, and you obviously are invested in that career. For the employers, there are workforce training grants as well, as employers can access this same program, Next Level Jobs program, through the state, that they can take incumbent workers, those that are employed right now, that they see potential in to take that next step in their career.
So, real quick, how did Governor Holcomb get involved in this?
Well,
what was the impetus behind Governor Holcomb getting involved in rolling this out?
Well, I think the state knows what we all know, that we've been talking about at the local level, which is that there's a skills gap.
Right.
I love the pipeline graphic that was taken in your first segment. At the end of that, it has two folds, and you can see it up there. You have the college ready and the career ready, and then the unprepared graduates. In the career ready focus of that, what we know is that there's a level of skill and there's a level of certification. Certification is critical because it proves that you can do the job, and it proves to that employer. And so as we take a look at that kind of pipeline, we know that one, college-ready folks often find themselves, even after their college experience, or at least a small college experience, ready to come into that career. And those technical skills, those critical certifications are necessary.
Yeah, so give me an example of some of the skills we're talking about here, some of the gaps that you hear every day.
Okay. Well, and we've identified not just as a state, but locally, we know that health care is a critical job, but you cannot drive very far in this town, in this county, without seeing a wanted CNA, certified nursing assistant.
Right.
This is an important entry-level healthcare position because they're the utility player of the healthcare, both at the hospital now and at the local retirement homes and those kind of places, all over a wide variety. Now that's an entry-level position. It's a short-term certificate. You go out. We have high school programs. We have non-high school programs. We have adult programs.
What about some other career in tech ed, automotive or welding or those kind of things?
Absolutely. You have industrial maintenance is critical.
Huge, yeah.
Industrial maintenance may be the most desired position of all the manufacturers. It's almost like you can put it on. I could record the conversation and play it for any person, because what we know is experience. You have to have certain certifications to take place. You have to have those technical skills, but you have to have a wide variety. You have to understand electricity. You have to understand motor controls. You have to understand some of those certain specific manufacturer-based skills, and that takes experience. But you can't get that experience without the certification level. And so, and we go back, and if you go back to rewind to the first segment of the program, we know it all starts out with having those basic skills that we know, those professional skills that are necessary in the workplace
How do people find out about the grants? And then certainly they're available, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
ivytech.edu
Okay.
/nextleveljobs is the easiest way to go into our program. That will route you through to make sure that you get into the next level program. And certainly the indiana.gov website with Next Level Jobs program, Workforce Ready Grants program. If you just type that in, it comes right up on any search engine. Obviously, here at the local level, if you call Ivy Tech, 765-966-2656, we have people on staff ready to guide you. Now, again, that could be through us, it could be through whatever program, but we know that this is really important, so much so that we have taken our 5 areas of specificity: healthcare, industrial maintenance, the healthcare or the certified nursing assistants, cybersecurity. We've taken those programs and made an extensive schedule for the October date, which is our second 8 weeks. So we know that this is ramping up. In the first 2 weeks of marketing this, we've had, not locally, statewide, we have right around 3,000 interests on this program. So we know that this is going to make an impact. It's going to make an impact quick, and we want to be ready as an institution.
I was just going to post your cell phone, but that's fine. One of the things that you've got other partnerships. So one of the things I wanted to just touch with you in the last 6 minutes or so. Yeah. You've got other partnerships that are in existence, either with Belden potentially, or A-House, or some of those key manufacturers.
Let me give you specifically about A-House has been one of these folks, and I think it speaks to, again, a lot of what was talked about in the first segments. A-House's internship program that runs through a variety of, obviously Ivy Tech is a part of that, but the internship program that runs through the Richmond Area Career Center, those folks go out of that, they do a high school experience, then they take the dual credit, and then they also then move into the internship program, the apprentice program through Ivy Tech, and also Purdue. And they have a lot of locally and both statewide. And so they have had over 30 apprentices complete their degree during this program. And many of those continue right on as they're from high school to educational experience into employment,
while working at A-House
and having a career. And so you can point those out. One of the great, really great stories that came out of that, as you know, during our state board meeting, we were out at A-House.
Fantastic event.
Fantastic event. And it was great because one of the third grade academy students that Pat talked about, the third grading reading level that the A-House family has been so instrumental in making happen. They are also a part of the apprentice program, which is also a part of which will be a part of the third grade scholarship program, which gets you into the educational part at Ivy Tech. It is really the continuum that we search for in the educational community.
Yeah. Is there a shortage of certification programs? We talked, the Georgetown study said 80% of individuals getting out of high school are going to need some form of post-high school, whether it's a certification or otherwise.
There are not a shortage of certification programs. I think here is the key, and we'll go back to it. I think very shortly, the manufacturers in this community are saying we've got to get to these folks earlier. We know that experience level at a young age, to be able to open that up. You know as well as anyone, we are working on things like manufacturing day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That give high school students a overview of the manufacturing world. We know that healthcare, we have to get folks in and around healthcare to see those career opportunities. There are not a shortage of certification programs. I think what we have is a shortage of folks who see that as an initial, again, back to the pipeline, that see that as an initial way to go, that can go and have a career, make some money, get a certification, and really do make career decisions along the way. we talk about Belden and we talk about manufacturers like that, they're working for aggressive ways, and I think we'll be announcing some programs very soon that are going to literally go into the high school and create those significant internships and experiences for early young people so that they can see what kind of career opportunities they have.
The thing that I've always respected about Ivy Tech, I think we talk about college debt all the time,
No
enormous,
doubt.
right?
No doubt.
So you can get some pretty good opportunities here, earn some skills, and get some either a 2-year degree or indoor certification, get in the workforce, you're not going to have any debt.
Well, and I would say that to you on any day that we were talking about Ivy Tech, about the debt and the comparative, the cost analysis, the return on investment for the taxpayer. Now we're talking about the fact that if you have your high school degree and you're willing to give a short term and go into certifications and build on those certifications. And it doesn't mean you can't get your associates. It doesn't mean you can't get your associates and move on to a 4-year institution. The state of Indiana is saying, we're in. We're in. So you literally have an opportunity now, and I say this for the Career Center folks, both at Whitewater and Richmond Area Career Center. The people in Wayne County, the students in Wayne County have an opportunity to have great experience, to be in the classroom, to be educated, to work, to get their education paid for, and continually climb the economic ladder.
Yeah, got about 90 seconds left. I do want to get your thoughts. How can we measure the success of this? What's the metric here?
Yeah, I think the metric is very clear. The Indiana, specifically statewide, is saying we want 60% of our adults to have a certificate or degree beyond high school. Wayne County is in the 20s. We need to move into the 30s. It would be, and we need 1 million more certificates. This is addresses 1.4. Ivy Tech has set a specific goal statewide to produce 50,000 credentials a year. That's doubling our output year to year. We know we're a ways away from it, but I promise you we're working on that specific goal and what our part here is in Ivy Tech Richmond.
About 30 seconds left. Best way to find out about this? I know you talked about the website. What are some other ways?
Yeah, I think the website, ivytech.edu/nextleveljobs, that will give you some overview of information in each of the credentials. I think you can go to any indiana.gov website, type in the Next Level Jobs program. That will give you the actual route to get in and then be put into the program itself if you're an individual sitting out there interested in that. And again, if you call Ivy Line, 888 Ivy Line, or 966-2656. Someone will help you.
Well, it's awesome. Thanks for all the great work you do. I'm a huge fan of yours in Ivy Tech. You just need more energy. Thanks again. That's all for this week's show. Thank you for watching In Focus. We'll see you down the road. Thanks again for watching.
Hi, Phil Quinn. Join us for another edition of Access to the Arts, where we talk with Monica Koschlein of the Richmond Symphony Orchestra and John Cook from Richmond Civic Hall in this beautiful facility, Richmond's Civic Hall.
Really excited to welcome the orchestra back to stage in just a little over 5 weeks. It's unbelievable, and get rolling again.
It's a really impressive venue, that's for sure.
It's another edition of Access to the Arts, Thursdays at 9 o'clock on WETV Channel 20.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, Channel 11.